So, hey everyone, this is Washington Farrington from Tonkean, filling in for your normal host of the Modern Business Operations podcast. Today, I'm here with Tim Sackett. How's your day going today, Tim?
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, to kick things off, I of course I went on LinkedIn. I stalked you a little bit, and I noticed that you have been in the HR space for quite some time. So,
Yeah.
would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background in the HR space? I also saw you were a board member too. So, would you mind sharing some of that for us?
Yeah, I started, like, literally recruiting kind of right out of college, and then got my master's in HR, decided to go the corporate kind of HR route, and then kept getting, like, yanked back into recruiting because it tended like, people would go, like, "Yeah, we love you in HR, but, like, we can't find people or we can't hire for this." And so then eventually that, kinda your just kinda career up and kinda do that bounce back and forth. About 8 years ago and I started so, like, probably 12 years ago, I started blogging, in the space. And so really recruiting, talking about recruiting, talent acquisition, execution, just like leadership. And I was writing every single day while still doing like, full-time kind of HR professional, TA professional work. And that funny thing happens where you start writing on the internet and people think like, oh, you must know something. And so that turns into speaking deals and book deals. And but then about 8 years ago, I started actually getting really into, like, the HR tech startup space and talking about technology, so I would review tech and, demo and brief, and so that turns into, like, getting on advisory boards and helping startups kind of get launched and talk about product and sales and all of that stuff.
Gotcha. That's actually really awesome. I feel like a lot of people have the question of how do I get on a board? And I think
Yeah.
you kind of just covered it right there. The first thing is to just really make a name for yourself in the space and really start to be like influential at the end of the day.
I think most people, like, have good ideas they could give to a board, but, like, why would they choose for you to be on there, is the question, right?
Exactly. So I'm curious about this. How pivotal was LinkedIn for you over the past few years since it's had like just like a major boom, kind of pushing you into some of those positions?
No, it's interesting. I think the content creation side of this, I have like a funny story about before there was a time, not many years ago, where there was like 10 people that were allowed to publish content on LinkedIn. It was the CEO of LinkedIn, Jeff Weiner. It was like Barack Obama, Richard Branson. It was like these giant kind of icons in the world, right? That were able to actually post. And then nobody else could. And then all of a sudden it opened up and everybody could. And I was like writing my blog like during this time, and somebody on Jeff Weiner's team actually shared with him, I did like basically the 10 rules of hugging at work, like how you should hug professionally. And it was kind of all a
Okay.
tongue in cheek joke. It wasn't serious, but he liked it and he published it. And like like in one day, like millions of people read this thing and it kind of went viral. So there's always like a viral aspect to like, potentially what like LinkedIn can do, which then helps obviously create your voice at a little bit higher level. I don't think I know there's ways and there's a lot of content creators out there, like, they spend every day, all day just thinking about how they go viral. But I think the best things, the things that go viral are the things you don't count on, and I never counted on that to go viral, it just kinda did, so.
Nice. That's awesome. You have to send that to me. I'm very curious. I definitely want to read it, even though I haven't been in the
The
office.
very first one is when you hug somebody at work, you don't, like, lean in and go, "You smell so good." Like, you just don't do that at work. Like
Oh, darn. Darn. I've had that happen to me a few times. I guess, they were doing it all wrong. Doing it all
it's
wrong.
not they're not professional at all, yeah.
Not at all. But let's pivot into the main topic of
Yeah,
of the podcast today, and that is the future of employees. If robots are doing all the work, what do we do? I feel
yeah.
like that's something that's been on top of everyone's mind over the past maybe like 6 months, ever since Chat GPT exploded onto the scene. So I'm curious to hear like what are your thoughts on this specific topic, as well as like where did the interest for this topic stem from?
Well, again, I'm a technologist at heart. Like I love the technology space. And we've been really in the HR tech space for sure, but really, in any tech space, when the whole machine learning thing happened, 8 to 10 years ago, and companies started talking about, oh, we're built on machine learning, we're built on machine learning. really what they were saying is we're built on an early version of artificial intelligence, right? That's what I mean, machine learning is a component of AI. And so most companies have been using AI longer than what they imagined. It was just machine learning. And even in the HR tech space, there was this piece where I would say over the last probably 5 or 6 years, people would go, "Oh, but you gotta be careful with AI because AI is racist." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, what are you talking about?" And they're like, "Oh, well, look at this example, and this company's going through a lawsuit because, it was choosing white people over black people and blah, blah, blah." And I'm like I said, "Well, but do you understand what machine learning does?" And they didn't. And you go, "Look, all's artificial intelligence is like a young child that you're teaching it. And what you teach it is then what it can go and do more and more and more of very quickly, very well, better than you. So if your hiring manager loves to hire white dudes, it's going to learn that you like to hire white dudes and it's going to teach you and show you how it can hire more white dudes. The AI isn't racist, you're racist."
Yeah.
And people are like, "Oh no, wait a minute." And having that kind of like the curtain opened up for them, and showing them how they were teaching the software to kind of be biased in some way. And it wasn't, then I think they go, "Oh," I said, "But as more and more versions of this came out, we can actually audit the algorithm. We can train the algorithm, teach the algorithm not to be racist or not to be biased in some way. Whereas I can try to educate Jim, the hiring manager, not to be biased, but he can also hide it very well, where AI, in software can't hide. I can actually audit it and see where exactly what's going on. And so I always tell people like I'm less concerned with my AI being biased than I am with my own people, 'cause that's harder to control. I was at a tent conference in San Francisco about 2 months ago, sitting with an AI professor from Stanford, and he made the comment of anytime you add human into a process, you increase bias. Anytime you add AI into a process, you decrease bias. And I think most of the people in the audience were HR people probably disagreed with that, but he was very logical in how he kind of was able to explain that. And so it's like, well, if you really truly want to eliminate bias out of your hiring process, you should be using more AI, not less AI. But I think this explosion of the interest is all because of, chat GPT and generative, and everybody wants to know like, oh, is it going to take my job? Or how can I use it to be better? How can I use it to be a 10x employee kind of thing?
Interesting. One of the funny things, I was in the HR tech space for about 3.5 years, and I was a
Yeah.
part of that entire well, like you said, we've been using AI much longer than we know. It was just called machine learning.
Yeah.
I was a part of that big breakthrough with machine learning where we know that facial recognition burst onto the scene out of
Yeah.
nowhere. And it was
Yeah.
called, yeah, machine learning. It wasn't AI, just machine learning. And going through that and seeing a lot of the problems that it caused. And it's like, okay, this is just this is I wish I would have thought about it back then the same way. Like, hey, this is just a very small step forward into what we're going to be able to do in the future, right? And of
Yeah.
course, we're going to have hiccups and things like that. And you brought up a really good point with having bias within the process. It's just like when people are implementing GPT into their day to day or any LLM into their day to day. It only can use the information that you trained it on, and like you said, if the information is biased, yeah, the process is gonna continue to be biased until you start implementing more and more data sets to it to realize "Oh, something's a little off here," you know?
Exactly. I always tell people, they always like, well, but if you can't trust, the answers coming from GGP, or BART or any of the big LLMs because of hallucinations, like, what would you do? And I go, well, let's say your work peer Tiffany sent you a spreadsheet or sent you a graph of some data that you asked for, and you were like in your gut, you were like, there is no way that could be right. You would actually do research and you would look into it yourself and you'd ask more questions and you would either determine that it was right or there was a mistake or there was error somewhere in there. The same thing happens when you're working with generative AI. It gets better and better and better, right? The longer it goes, it's going to continue to get smarter and be better than we are. That doesn't mean that it won't make a mistake. And if you see something or feel something where you're going, that just doesn't seem right, then you're going to have to do more research, right? One of the cool things about these large language models is I'll give a great example how it hallucinates. I was getting ready for a big presentation and I wanted to give some examples. And so I said, what is the most controversial comment that Tim Sackett has ever made? You know, and it literally came back with, don't hire ugly employees. They'll reduce the value of your company. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never said that. Like I literally made it up as a quote. And so I said, can you give me like the source of where you got this quote? And it gave a blog post of mine where I said, you should only hire pretty people because they increase the value of your organization. And instead, it actually made up a negative connotation to that versus the positive connotation. And again, I was making a joke, right, around hiring pretty people and all these companies that you walk into like some company and you're like, holy crap, everybody here is beautiful. What's going on? Like there has to be some kind of a hiring thing going on here where you only hire pretty people. Um, but, like, that's one of those things where you go, "Oh, I can actually go to the source. I can ask it where it's getting its source. I can actually kinda delve into the background of where it's getting its research, and either it made it up or it actually will give you the right data and you can kinda find out what happened to it."
Exactly. And speaking on the like different I mean, essentially hiring people based on them being pretty, right? But
Yeah.
not direct correlation. But how do you think that AI automation is going to affect the job market over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, everybody wants to know, like, immediately how is it gonna impact their job, and we start to see all these little features coming out in the technology, most of which is little tasky things, like I need to send a message to all of my employees regarding a change in payroll for a holiday week or something, right? Immediately, the AI would just, craft that message, let you look at it, let you tweak, make some changes if you want. Bam, you go out. But you no longer have to create it. You can go back and talk to it and say, hey, I need to craft this message and I want to make it sound, very upbeat. And this is a very real positive, blah, 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 whatever. And it's going to come back in that tone, right? That's a lot of what we're seeing. I need to send 25 personalized messages to candidates regarding this job to see if they're interested, right? And instead of saying one template that's going to send out to all 25, it will actually specifically come up with 25 personalized templates where it's not only taking some information from your current job or your current profile and the job that we have open, and it's combining those, right? So everyone's going to feel like, wow, this recruiter really spent time looking at my background and how it fits with the job. And I feel like this person really wants to get to know me, right? All of that can be done right now with generative, or those are the things we're seeing being launched at this moment. But you can foresee then in the future, like I would think a hiring manager is going to go, hey, is this gonna it's all gonna be verbal for the most part, right? It's gonna go and say, "Hey, whatever you wanna call your AI, hey, AI, I need to hire another software engineer like Washington, that we hired 6 months ago." And it will come back and ask, like, "Okay, do you want exactly, another Washington? Or would you like" and the manager might go, yeah, except I also need to add a little bit more of this front end development, don't need as much testing, and it would kind of craft, right? And then it would go out, it would post the job, it would search for people, it would reach out to them, it would help them schedule their interview. If there was any pre-employment like testing or whatever you wanted to do, it would take care of that. It would continue to nudge these candidates. And 6, 7, 8 days later, the manager would go, "Holy crap! I have this person scheduled on my calendar for an interview." And the manager could also during that process go, "Hey, AI, just want an update, like, where are we at?" And the AI would come back specifically and say, "I've reached out to 523 candidates. I've heard back from 17, none of which felt, fit it would actually give specifics. Right now, you ask a recruiter that and they'd be like, yeah, I'm working on it, and I've talked to a couple people, haven't found anybody yet." And it's just so hard for them to actually come to with really, really great data where I think that, as in the future, we'll see that. So then the question would be, okay, well, gosh, that sounds like you're going to eliminate all recruiting. No, I think recruiting then evolves into being the true talent scout. Like right now, we tell hiring managers, like, hey, here's the best talent. We only hire the best talent. We hear CEOs and executives say it all the time. Here at Amazon, we only hire the top talent. No, you hire the talent that applied to your job at the moment it was open. And basically, what you're hiring is the tallest of the seven dwarfs, right? You're not, you don't even know if that's the best talent. It could be the worst talent possible, but it's the best talent that was available at that moment you posted the job. I think the future of recruiting then was where recruiters really go out, understand who actually is the best in every job. And now how do I kind of go after them and get them interested in our company and our positions we have, our hiring managers, and really get them to desire to come work for us. It's a completely different way than how we recruit right now.
Oh yeah, 100%. I have a funny story about that too. When I was in the HR tech space, we ended up working with a large grocery chain, and there was something like the way that their HR system was set up, essentially, or their ATS system was.
Yeah.
It it sorted everything alphabetical, right? So then they ended up only hiring people whose names started with, like, the first 5, 6, 7 letters of the alphabet
Yeah.
because, like, of course, they needed to hire a mass.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, are you truly getting, like, top quality hires, or are you just hiring the first people to come through the door? So I think it's super important that you said, like, this doesn't eliminate the role of the recruiter because it doesn't. It changes what their day to day is, and it makes it easier for them.
Washington, it's a great example because I think, again, even most like, well-run ATSs nowadays, still it'll be like, hey, we have 100 people applied for this job. As a recruiter, I can't go through all 100. I'm going to go through the first 20, 25. I'm going to pick the ones out of those. I'm going to pick five. I'm going to reach out to them. I'm going to interview a handful. I'm going to send them on to the manager. That meant 75 people never even got a sniff, never got to be a part of it. Imagine like, and then like those same companies will go, oh, we're super inclusive and we welcome everybody. And yet you just totally didn't look at 75 people. And like AI will be able to go through and look at every single person and give every single person a chance to be a part of the process and really get to the best talent within that group. Now, again, it still might not be the best talent overall, but it's going to be a much better job of getting everybody an equal shot at that job, that wants to be a part of it.
Exactly. I feel like that's the most important thing. And I
Yeah.
see that as a huge benefit for just like number one, the candidates as well as the recruiters. Do you see any other potential benefits that, this AI automation thing, of course, that's kind of changing the landscape of everything. Do you see any more benefits that it'll have?
Oh, I think every single aspect of what we do in the HR function, and I would say HR, I mean, really every corporate function we have is going to be impacted by generative. An HR example that I give is HR self-service or shared service, where an employee just calls HR and goes, "Hey, I don't know how much PTO I have," and they would get on their HCM and go, "Oh, you have 56 hours. Okay, cool, thanks, cool, thanks." They would check that off as a success. I had a question, I answered it successfully, everybody's happy. That's today. Now, if you think generative will that somebody will, they'll type in or they'll ask like, "Hey, how many hours do I have?" It would be 56. Now, generative would also go, "Well, wait, why does somebody ask how much PTO they have? Maybe they want to go on vacation. Oh, hey, you have 56 hours. Are you going to go on vacation? Yeah, I'm going on vacation. I'm taking my wife and kids. We want to go to Disney. Oh, cool. Have you scheduled your flight yet? We can help you. We actually have a discount through our Disney program. If you want me to order your tickets, we know you have a couple of pets. Have you set up a pet sitter yet? Can I help you with that?" Like, talk about a different level of employee experience. I mean, but somebody also might be calling for PTO because, "Oh, no, I have a sick child, or I have to take care of my mother who is sick, or a grandparent." And then, okay, oh, look, if that's the case, can we help you? Maybe we don't want you to take PTO. We'll get you started with FMLA, or we have, we can put you on intermittent leave and get some other benefits for you. Or, do you have the right doctors or mental health resources you need? Like, or maybe somebody wants to know how many hours are because they're going to cash out and leave, and we should have a save strategy. Right now, we just deliver them the hours they want and we don't even ask a question. Where generative actually will probably already know why that person's asking because they have full access to their emails and they go, "Oh gosh, we know this person's already talking to other companies and interviewing." And so they're looking to cash out. Um, and so it just takes it to a completely different level of potential employee experience that we might be able to deliver.
100%. I personally believe that that is where it's going. Everyone's kind of afraid of where it's going right now, but I think the companies that can capitalize on the employee experience or just like the experience of the requester, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're gonna win the battle because that's the most important thing at the end of the day, right? I mean, just streamlining everything as and making it as smooth as possible. Like, instead of, no one wants to log into, I'm just gonna say ADP, we don't use ADP, but no one wants to
Yeah.
log into ADP. You forget your password, they gotta send you a code, all of this stuff just to, bounce through and request, the next week off. Like,
Yes.
or even, yeah, no one wants to do that anymore. And even the fact that, hey, you could save money on flights for like Disney and all these other things. Like, companies have a lot of these programs in place and their employees, like, no one's reading through the entire handbook. So they don't know. So meeting them where they are with that information makes everything so seamless. It's awesome.
And HR leaders constantly complain that like, "Oh, we have this great retirement benefit, but no one uses it." Well, what if you constantly had a generative kind of AI assistant reaching out to people going, "Hey, do you understand if, you put $5 a week of your paycheck into this fund, and we did this for 3 years, like this is what this could turn into. Can I set that up for you, right? Or we have a company match. Like if you only put in $500, the company's going to match $500 and that $1,000 a year turns into whatever. Like we just don't, we do it once a year for open enrollment and then we just kind of forget about it versus in the time when somebody might be like ready to hear that and want to sign up, easy can we make that for them and do that? Um, Referral bonuses. Like we tend to like put a referral bonus out there and we go, oh yeah, everybody knows about it. But what we don't know is like the one time when, let's say I'm an accountant in a company of 25,000 people and we have multiple divisions. And then across the other side of the country, we have another accountant position open up. Well, wouldn't we wanna contact all of our accountants in the company and say, "Hey, do you know somebody in the West Coast that that's an accountant maybe you went to school with that would be open for this job?" And we send that to them and do that. Like, right now, we would physically manually have to do that and send that out, and first we have to look up all the people, where generative will just be able to automatically send that out for us, and we
Yeah.
won't even ask, it'll just do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. I agree.
It just becomes more intuitive, right? It's the reason why most of us have an iPhone. It's not that the iPhone's better than the Google phone or the Android. It's actually not technically better. It's actually years behind. But the iPhone is so intuitive, even our grandparents can use it. And so it just the ease of use becomes so much better across the board.
Yeah. It's all about experience. That's all
Yeah.
it's about. I do have a question though. In the HR space, do you like which well, I guess it's kind of like, I'll just leave it as a one-part question. Like, what roles and tasks do you see that humans will continue to have an advantage, over AI?
That's a great question. I always tell people stop asking what AI is gonna take away from you and ask what you uniquely have as a human that's different than what AI could ever replace. And there's the empathy side, there's the connection side. We have this epidemic of loneliness right now. And we think, oh, well, AI will be able to take over for that. I don't think so, right? Like maybe for a small, tiny portion of the people that will be happy talking to a computer, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but for the most part, right, we have this superpower as humans to make others feel wanted and desired. And I think we have that in talent acquisition, we have that in HR. Um, we have the ability to kind of see somebody and take a look at their potential and go, gosh, I want to push this person right to a new level or to something where they didn't think they would. So I think we constantly have to look at what are those connections or things that we do that are uniquely human that a computer will have a really difficult time actually, kind of taking over from us. And those are the things like when I said like in recruiting will be completely different, but it will be also just as important to go out and really understand, hey, all this tactical kind of process stuff. Yep. AI can do that. It can do it 24/7. It can do it better, faster than we can. But what it can't do is actually go out and make somebody feel desired that's the best in their field and make this connection over a long period of time. And I think those are the things that will stand out for everybody.
Yeah. I'm on the same page as that. Just having you got to have the human element, at the end of the day.
Washington, did you see there's a grocery store, I think it was like in like one of the Scandinavian countries, like the Netherlands or Norway or somewhere, where they went automated checkouts, but then they had a checkout that was specifically like it was actually like it said slow lane. And the cashiers were trained to actually have conversations with the people and take more time because some people want that. I think we take a look at elevated experiences and what people will see as premium experiences, kind of VIP experiences will be the times that you actually want to work with a human. You want to talk with a human because you don't even know how to explain the problem to like AI, but a human could help you come up with what that might be, and actually have that real connection. Like we talk to so many automated things right now in our lives that I think there'll be people willing to upcharge and pay more to actually have a real human experience.
Oh, 100%. Like, I completely agree with that, especially even more now. Like, I saw the grocery store thing, but ever since, the pandemic, everyone's kinda been stuck in their houses, even working from home still, a lot of people.
Yeah.
And yeah, you miss on that human connection. Now if we automate every single thing that we do from hiring people, their employee experience, like, number 1, they're probably not gonna take a job at that company, and number 2, they probably won't stay at that company much longer.
Yep.
So, I know we're actually about to go overtime, but I have 2 more questions, and then
Okay.
I'll let you go. The first one is, what is the best advice you've ever received, in your career?
Um, for me, it's been fill the void, which is no matter what role you're in, no matter what part of the company you're in, if you see that there's something's missing, that you see that somebody doesn't want to take a step forward into something, like anybody can do that for the most part, right? Unless it's some really specialized skill. Like I'm not in a hospital and all of a sudden, hey, there's a brain surgery at 2 that we don't have a doctor for. I can't step into that, of course. But when I did work at a large health system, we were making this entire transition to like electronic medical records, right? From like kind of like old school to new school. And you would think like, oh, that should be an IT, and the IT from a project management standpoint could run that. But what it meant was giant process to every single part of the health system. Every single employee was going to be impacted. And so as a TA leader, I stepped in and said, "Hey, I'll take the leader role on that." Right. And so step into the void because you never know where that's going to take your career. Most people just won't, and so the few that will potentially like put themselves in a really great position for their executives and people, just being able to do things that you never thought you could.
Awesome. That's really good advice. And the last one, is there anything that you wanted to plug or chat about quickly that we didn't get to in our, time today?
No, I mean, I write a lot on my blog. I published a book called The Talent Fix, but I mean, people can just if you Google Tim Sackett, like I'm like the first 100 pages. There used to be like a truck driver chaplain named Tim Sackett out of Minneapolis. I think I stole all of his SEO. He's probably like cursing me to God right now. Like, I always tell people like it would be cool if I was the same guy. Like I'm HR tech guy during the week, and then I'm truck driver chaplain on the weekend. But we're two different dudes. Yeah.
That would be a sweet gig. Well, awesome, man. I appreciate you, hanging out with us for 30 minutes here. Yeah, thank you. And hopefully we can, chat again in the future for sure.
Cool. Thanks for having me.